from Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. This verse describes our mission trip pretty well. Only one of our calls to help went according to plan. On the first day, we showed up to the mission group and discovered that we were accidentally scheduled to be there a few months earlier. After a few minutes, they found something for us to do. The girls were supposed to organize one of the storage rooms, while the big, strong boys went upstairs to carry down boxes from the attic. After us girls had finished our job, we helped the boys carry boxes down. Miss Angela was our organizer downstairs. She did a great job. After a while, everyone was getting hot and tired because the attic felt like it was on fire. As soon as you stepped into that room, you immediately started sweating. Anyways, we got some water and then started clearing out another room. The first thing we had to do was move a couch. As we were trying to get through the door with the couch, Jack, Soren's friend, scraped his scab on the doorframe. He started bleeding, and at first he refused the Band-Aid I offered him. But after a minute or so, he came to me asking for the Band-Aid. This caused him to earn the nickname Scabby for the rest of the trip. While I was cleaning him up, everyone else managed to move the couch and clear out the other objects. The next big thing we had to move was a Christmas tree, from the attic to the room. Our big, strong girls, Addison and Sophia, the friends that Abby and I invited, managed to bring the tree all the way downstairs. After the tree was in its rightful place, we finished bringing all of the Christmas decorations downstairs pretty quickly. Everyone got a good workout that day. The second day of our trip was the only mission call that went according to plan. Our job was to fill boxes with food and then load them into cars as they went by. Each car had a number written on the windshield that told us how many boxes to load in. Some of the people who came by were picking up boxes for other people as well as themselves. We were told that some of the boxes were not supposed to be given away because they served many purposes for the mission group. Because of this, we had to unload the food from the boxes into these different cars, and we had to do this quickly so the line of cars could keep moving. There are a few instances where the car would start moving before we had finished unloading the food. Thankfully, these cars didn't get far because there was always someone in front of it to stop it. That was something I found really cool about this group. They knew quite a lot of people who came through to get boxes and tried to talk to as many of them as they could. They were all super friendly and knew how to handle almost any situation that popped up. One instance was when the tailgate of a truck fell off. They were trying to close it when it came off completely, but no one freaked out. Everyone stayed calm as they tried to put it back on. Eventually, the driver had to come out and help them, and he just calmly came over and said that it happened all the time. He put it back on, got back into his car, and drove away. It was all in all a cool experience to see how grateful everyone was for the help. We helped load over 100 cars that day. Later that day, we had gotten permission to swim at the neighbor's pool for a few hours. We played monkey in the middle, but it was girls versus boys. Mind you, there were 5 girls, 2 boys. The boys still won. It was fun, but we were all sunburned in some shape or form after spending around 2 hours in the pool. After everyone was dried off and changed, we went to the store to get the ingredients for our assigned meals. We had been split into 2 groups the day before, the breakfast group and the dinner group. I was in the dinner group with Addison, Sophia, and Soren. The breakfast group was made up of Jack, Abby, and Caitlin. My group had decided on enchiladas for our meal. Addison and Sophia were each going to make a batch of enchiladas, chicken and beef, while I made guacamole, while Soren was there to help anyone who needed it. Everything turned out great, and it was fun to be making meals on these trips again, like we had done in the past. On the third day, our call wasn't until later in the day, so we found something fun to do while we waited. We got to go on 2 cavern tours in the natural bridge caverns. It was pretty cool to learn about how they were formed and how they were discovered. We then went to the San Marcos River for a while because we still had a little bit before we were supposed to be at the mission group. We had originally planned to help serve food to the homeless, but there was an accident in the mess hall, and so we couldn't do it inside anymore. When we got there, we found out that they had pre-made everything and didn't need help passing out food. This was another instance where we had to go with the flow and offer our help wherever it was needed. They asked if we could help move piles of branches from the back, so they had room for porta potties. Everyone got started helping, and the branches were cleared out in no time. A few people got cut by some thorns, but luckily I had packed some disinfectant and Band-Aids, so no one bled out. The only other thing they needed help with was moving some tables and chairs to another building. After that was done, we waited around in case they needed our help with anything else. While we were waiting, we got to hear the story of the man who ran the whole operation, and it was inspiring to hear how he had overcome his demons and then decided to help people who had suffered just like he had. While we were waiting, I was thinking back to everything we had done so far and realized that so many things had not gone to plan, but there was always something for us to do. There are always more ways to help, and there will never be a shortage of people who need it. This is why I really enjoy our mission trips, because they help open your eyes to see the many ways you can help. It doesn't have to be big, because any amount of help is greatly appreciated by the people receiving it. No matter where we were or what we did, people were always grateful that we were there to help. Even though this trip was short, we still managed to help a lot of people, overcome any obstacle, and have some fun along the way.
In Psalm 82, it talks about God helping the wealthy and the fortunate when there is needy and the orphan sleeping outside with empty stomachs. And after reading that, I was reminded of the third day, the day we went to feed the homeless. We drove there to find out that the mess hall wasn't available, so we had to be out in the heat, but the homeless didn't mind. They were just happy to eat something. So we cleaned up the branches in the back, got a few cuts and scratches along the way, and brought up the food. I saw how gracious they were for food. Sometimes they would have to go days without it. And I think, why isn't God helping them? Why do we go home with a full stomach, a bed, loving parents, and a roof over our heads, but not them? But then I realized, God is putting his work through us, through all of us, and that's why I'm so grateful for being invited to the trip. And that's why I'm so grateful to have looked through that point of view.
Psalm 82, verses 3 and 4 says, "Save the weak and the orphan, defend the humble and needy, rescue the weak and the poor, deliver them from the power of the wicked." When I read these verses, they remind me of the work we did to help the people who needed it and how grateful everyone was for our assistance. At Barnabas Connection, we helped move boxes of toys out of the attic, moved a couch to the front porch for pickup, and we even moved a Christmas tree from the attic. The ladies there were thankful for all the manpower, and especially the woman power. At the Hayes County Food Pantry, we helped hand out food to an endless line of cars. The people who received the food were so grateful, even when we accidentally broke a man's tailgate to his truck. At the Southside Community Center, we cleaned up a ton of brush from the property. The man was so grateful because he didn't have enough time to do it himself, and he didn't want to have to ask the homeless people he served to have to help him. One of the people who often helped at the food pantry remarked how nice it was that young people were out in the community helping others instead of sitting inside playing with the electronics. It taught me that people of all ages can do God's work and make a difference in the community.
Okay, so first, I'm Soren. If you didn't know, I got a haircut. I look very different. So when I was planning my sermon, I got a lot of advice on what passages to use. Like, some people said use Hebrews, some people said use the Psalms. So I thought about it for a while, and I decided that I'm going to use all of them. So here goes my best attempt at a passable sermon. So today in the gospel, Jesus tells us that he hasn't come to bring peace to the earth, but rather to bring division. Now, this is something pretty weird for the Prince of Peace to say. So I'm going to do my best to try and interpret it. And to start to interpret it, we have to go to Jeremiah. So in today's reading, God is complaining to Jeremiah about the false prophet who takes God's words and corrupt it, using it for their own purposes, not God's. He says he's fine with people who dream. Like, dreaming is a normal thing. His problem comes when your dreams suddenly become the holy word of God. When you start using God's words for your own uses, that's when God has a problem. So, if we go back to the gospel, we can think about what Jesus says in the context of Jeremiah. In Jeremiah, the false prophets were corrupting God's words for their own uses. Now imagine what would happen if these false prophets were able to corrupt Jesus' words for their own uses. The author's not saying that Jesus is going to go around handing out AR-15s for massive epic battle royale, but he's saying that Jesus' words are going to be so strong and so powerful that people were going to try and corrupt them for their own devices, sort of like when the church sold indulgences. He's saying that the arguments over his words and actions will be so strong that they will cause division among people. And, you can see that already, like the divides over whether to use leavened or unleavened bread or instrumental music or not. These have divided the church for centuries. These are all divisions that have been caused by Jesus. So, now you're asking yourself, how do we avoid the words of the false prophets and follow the true words of God? Well, I don't want to say I can answer the question, but I think I can answer the question. So, in today's psalm, God is berating all the other gods, saying that they're dummies and that they're going to fall and die. That was a rough paraphrase. Don't quote me on that. Since religion and gods back then, and to some extent now, reflected upon the society that they lived in, you can draw easy lines between the gods and the societies. So he complains about how the gods, and by extension their followers in that society, judge people unjustly and show favor to the wicked. He then goes on and says that they should save the weak and the orphan, defend the humble and needy, rescue the weak and the poor, and deliver them from the power of the wicked. So if we go back to Jeremiah, when God tells us to listen to his words and not the words of the false prophets, you ask yourself how to do that. Well, this is how: by saving the weak and the orphan, by defending the humble and rescuing the weak, by delivering them from the power of the wicked. And that's sort of what we did on the mission trip. Now, I'm just going to go over to Hebrews for a bit, because this is like pretty heavy reading. So in Hebrews, the author goes back to the Old Testament, showing us famous works, saying like, if Moses can part the Red Sea, then you can load boxes at a food bank, like even if the tailgate falls off. If the walls of Jericho can fall by faith alone, then I can move a pile of brush. So not only does the author say that, he adds the image of a cloud of witnesses surrounding us in our work. So not only is Moses' work down here able to inspire us to help us load the food bank stuff, he's also up there in heaven cheering us on. So if we wrap it all up, we can see that the traps of the false prophets who use Jesus' words to sow divisions so that they can reap the benefits. If we want to escape those, we should turn to the Psalms, and the Psalms tell us to rescue the weak and the poor, among other things. We then go to the Hebrews for a bit of hope, gathering from it the knowledge and comfort that with the great cloud of witnesses surrounding us, we can do what the Psalms tell us to do. Amen.